Yo, what's up? And War Eagle, War Report family. You got Ike Jones. We are here. And uh, just in case you didn't know, Philip Montgomery has been recently informed that he will not be retained as offensive coordinator going into the 2024 season. And we are here to talk about it. Hopefully, everybody is having a good Friday. I told you guys we were going to be on the ready just in case we got news of anything. And so we're here. We're here to talk about it, and hopefully you guys are having a good Friday, as like I said, and everything is going well. But we got to come in here and discuss the offensive coordinator position. Um, Philip Montgomery, one season on the Plains, he is already gone. Press release from the university says that coach informed Philip today he would not be retained as the offensive coordinator. Says Philip is a good coach and a good man. Decisions like this are never easy. However, I decided this is best for our program moving forward. I'm appreciative of his efforts this past year and wish him nothing but the best. That is from Coach Hugh Freeze. Here reporting, Nathan King said today that after, let's see, I'm trying to see what if, nothing really on the details of what the payout or the buyout's got to be for his contract. But we do know definitively, this is not rumor, this is from the university, Coach Philip Montgomery will not be retained as offensive coordinator. So in the words of the Auburn faithful, he gone. So we're here to talk about it, man. What are you guys' thoughts? What are your feelings on this? I know a lot of people have been clamoring for this for weeks now. They've wanted to see Coach Philip Montgomery out the door. Who do you think replaces him? What do you think is the move is going to be? Is Coach Freeze going to be the play caller going forth into next season? Joining me live right now is a guy who I know has got plenty of opinions about all things Auburn football. And that, of course, is none other. Well, not right now. He told me he needs another second. I'll keep filibustering, but going to be joining me in just a minute. But what are your thoughts about this? Who do you think is going to be the guy? I think the popular opinion right now is Coach Freeze is going to do it himself. I've heard some rumors. Again, you guys know I don't deal in rumors for real. I've heard some rumors about some guys that could potentially be heading this way, but I will toss out three options for you that are probably the more popular opinions about who's going to be the next offensive coordinator. Number one is Kent Austin. Just move him up to let him be the OC. He's been your QB guy for a while, and let him be the guy, and then Coach Hugh Freeze calls play himself. That's number one. The number two option that I've heard being floated around is Willie Korn, who was a previous OC for Coach Freeze, has been tied to him. And then the number three option that I have actually been hearing a lot about is a former Auburn guy by the name of Damian Craig. Damian Craig has been getting rumored around for a while about his potential place on this team, and he could be brought in as the offensive coordinator for Coach Hugh Freeze next year. So those are the three names that I've heard, and I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on all of these things to see where you guys lie with this. Super chat here. Appreciate B Will's forehead. He says Grant Lloyd could have saved Phil's job. So sad. I love the fact that the Grant Lloyd thing is continuing to be a joke amongst the fan base here. It's not a real thing, but I love the joke continuing. Grant Lloyd is the gift that keeps on giving. So we definitely appreciate Grant Lloyd for his ability to allow us to come in and talk about things at his expense a little bit. But, hey, listen, I'm sure he's a good guy. I've never actually had a conversation with Grant. I wonder what Grant Lloyd is doing today. He's not being an offensive coordinator for Auburn, but I wonder if he is, holding a clipboard somewhere, getting some young man ready to go play football. Because they say the guys that don't really do well at the thing are the best guys to coach. So Grant Lloyd probably would be an amazing coach. So definitely ready to see what you guys are talking about out here. Let's go to the comment section. I see quite a few people who say Kent Austin. Your mic is doing something crazy right now, Mike. You've got a lot of background static. We'll drop that out until we get that right. But Mike G is going to be joining me here in just a second to talk about this. I don't see anybody who is sad about this in the comment section. Is nobody going to cry a tear for Philip Montgomery? Mike G, let's get a mic check on you. How is it?
Mic check.
You're in there. Let's do it, man. So how Philip Montgomery?
All right. News is rolling in as we are live. Ike, I've got some insights coming in from those inside the program talking about this firing. So as soon as I get the okay on what to share, I will share it. Look, this
might not be the last time we go live today. Let me just say that.
Yeah. There's going to be lots happening over the next 48 hours. You had to see this coming.
Yeah.
At the end of the bowl game,
we said it.
Hugh Freeze threw Philip Montgomery all the way under the bus. He had refrained from doing that for most of the year. Yeah. When talking about executing a plan, Ike, and ultimately just players doing the job. I think after the bowl game, after the Music City Bowl, there was an acknowledgement that coaching has to do the job, and it all falls back to him. So he's responsible for Montgomery. We had reports during the season that there was a tug of war going on between how to execute this thing. So I'm going to go into some more detail here. Monday game plans being changed to midweek, right? And only 30% of the game plan being executed on game day because of the tug of war that's going on offensively. So, if you're Hugh Freeze, you got a rude awakening after the Music City Bowl. He went into this thing thinking, I've got 3 years to get this thing there. But year one, the approach to year one, the overly focusing on recruiting, not paying enough attention to this team this year, helped land you here. And I think that he put a lot on Montgomery, but ultimately didn't let Montgomery do the job. And if you ask me, he needs to bring somebody in here who will run it exactly his way, or he needs to do it.
Yeah. Listen, we have said this over and over again. And again, I'm going to borrow Mike G's phrase. Stop me when I tell a lie. Oh, no, actually, just answer these questions for me as frankly as you can. Michael Gittins. What was Coach Brian Harson's record in year one as his head coach?
6-7.
6-7. Did Coach Harson win or lose his bowl game?
Yeah, he lost it.
Did Coach Brian Harson have issues with his offensive coordinator throughout the totality of his first season, to the point of they disagree on game plan and things being changed last minute during?
Yep, they had tons of issues. Issues with installs.
I'm not done. Let me continue asking you questions. Did he fire his offensive coordinator in the first year of his tenure? Did he also have a tight end break the single season record for catches in a season in his first year as coach?
Yeah.
How, I ask you, are we drastically outside of recruiting? I get that's what everybody's going to say because I think that matters. How is this drastically different than year one Brian Harson? I ask now.
In terms of results, it's not drastically different. It's not. They tried a lot of things offensively that didn't work, and they weren't able to get things going. The difference is that those struggles were blamed on a talent gap. And what people started to see after the bowl game was this is what we've been saying is more coaching than talent gap suggests. Right? What do you expect? The standard line from the fan base is, it's year one. What do you expect? He was left a mess. Yeah. But when your third string quarterback comes in and shows up your first string quarterback, that's not about talent. That's a talent evaluation. That's a system issue. That's something that's systemic that needs to be fixed right now. And I think that Hugh Freeze is going to turn his attention to this team operationally outside of recruiting. He has to. And I'll say this. I gave a midseason rant, Ike, on the attention that these guys were owed from this coach. Because they didn't really choose him. He came in.
Right.
You took over the program and you needed these guys to win. You owe them the attention and focus that they deserve from their head coach. Guys that were playing for him, guys that were busting tail for him. to be repeatedly thrown under the bus week after week. So this coaching change is acknowledging that, hey, listen, something, it's not all the talent. Something needs to be different. And if you
That's true.
bring new talent in, you're going to have some of the same problems. It may look a little flashier, but it's going to result in L's. So when I said that I thought Auburn's ceiling was 7-5, this is what I meant. If you're not going to change anything, now you're going to bring the same quarterback back, and you're going to say everybody needs to execute better, and all you have is some highly touted freshmen, 7-5. Because the decision making is going to be the same, the way you're looking at it is going to be the same, and this is an acknowledgement that we need to look at this thing differently going into year 2, or the seat's going to be super hot in year 3. Now, after the spring, after I see who they bring in an offensive coordinator, after I see how Hugh Freeze decides to handle this, I'd be willing to revise my 7-5 ceiling statement. But until such a time,
I'm just not ready to make any opinions about next year because there's so much that still needs to be ironed
for sure. Out. Yeah, but again, I'm only making that opinion because of what they said about how they were going to go into next year. So if you're telling me that until I hear something different from you, no, 7-5, you're a 7-5 team next year.
Now,
right?
Again, I think we're too early to even be making those types of predictions. I'm not stopping you from doing it. I'm saying I'm not going to join you.
Yeah. Look.
What I will say is though, where I agree.
I will predict based on what they say until they say something different.
I got you. So, I'm not trying to get you to change it. I'm just saying I disagree with even making it a prediction this early.
Yeah, this was a welcome pivot. This was a very welcome pivot. Because ultimately the offensive guy needs to be the offensive guru. Auburn has gone through 3 coaches of this now. Gus was supposed to be the offensive guru. You got a couple prolific years and a lot of mediocre years. Brian Harsin was supposed to be an offensive guy. The offensive struggles were disappointing. And in Hugh Freeze's first year, it may not have resulted in wins, but at times it looked inept. And instead of saying we had a bad plan, you said we don't have talent.
Yeah. Again, I don't think that we're drastically in a different place from year 1 Harsin, year 1 Coach Hugh Freeze. I think that Coach Hugh Freeze has the recruiting puts you in a different conversation going forward. But there are a lot of things that need to get fixed in this locker room right now. And this is potentially step 1 in the direction of fixing some of those things, especially if Coach Hugh Freeze is going to be the play caller next year, or to your point, he's going to hire someone that's going to do it exactly as he would. B. Will's forehead jumping in with a super chat says, I'll be here for an eternity, Ike. I welcome all of the levity that you bring to the chat. Another one here from him. It says, hire Jimbo. My goodness.
Yeah, no, we're not that
B.
low.
Will would lose every bit of sanity
he would quit.
that he had. Yeah,
he
I don't think
couldn't.
B. Will could be on this show anymore if we have. Now let's be clear. I don't think that B. Will thinks that Jimbo Fisher's not a good offensive coordinator. He thinks he's a terrible head coach. So maybe he would pivot on his criticism as an OC. But I don't know that B. Will would still be a part of the War Report if we did that. I don't think he could get on here and make this any sort of real conversation be had if we. I don't know. He'd leave. So for the sake of keeping him, let's say no, that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of change that needs to be happening and a lot of pivots that need to happen to get this, at least make it in the image. And this is the same thing, and we caught flack for this, but at least make it in the image of the head coach. Whatever the coach decides is the identity of this team, let him be able to steer that ship in that direction. And that way, when it goes poorly, or if it goes poorly, I don't say when because that sounds so definite. If it goes poorly, you can at least say you did it your way until you got pushed out the door, as opposed to having to acquiesce to other people telling you this is what you need to do. Or listen, I don't know what all went behind. Well, I do know a lot of what went behind the decision to hire Coach Montgomery. But at the end of the day, I think they felt like they kind of got down to the end of the list and they needed to get somebody. And this seemed like a good fit because their schemes were similar enough. And maybe we can get in here and figure this thing out. But ultimately, when Coach Freeze decided or was asked to, I don't know what the conversation was, that he was not going to be the play caller for 2023, I think this was the inevitable place we were going to end up.
It is being reported that the next OC coach could be Patrick Nix.
Being reported by who?
Justin Hokanson is reporting this is hinting at this right now.
Okay.
Yeah, Jake Crane is saying he's already in.
That Patrick Nix has already been hired or already been interviewed, and
Oh
like
yeah, or like he's
it's
saying
a done deal.
yeah, like almost like it's a done deal, like it's going to happen. So we don't know how true that is.
That's interesting.
But the statement was another Knicks could be joining the Auburn family soon, according to Justin Hokanson. You know, Jay Crane. Yeah,
that could be Derek Nix though. That doesn't have to be.
That's Derek Nix.
Yeah,
Okay,
Derek Nix was a wide receiver coach, formerly on. So yeah, it might not be Patrick. It could be Derek. So
okay. He responded to a comment that said Pat Nix is the new OC coach, and Jay Crane responded he's already in. So
so they are saying Patrick.
They're saying Patrick. Yeah.
Okay. That one
Patrick.
I didn't see coming. You could have given me 20 guesses, and I would not have landed.
Gonna be a
Patrick
wild
Nix.
48 hours. It's gonna be a wild 48 hours.
Listen, it is going. We are opening Pandora's box today, and a lot of stuff is about to start flying out for sure. Auburn Dad jumps in with a super chat saying, here's my thinking. Hugh Free hired Kelly and will hire a recruiting OC so he can focus on play calling and not just recruiting because he's trying to build out of high school and couldn't focus on the game. Just my 2 cents. I'm not mad at this statement of trying to get somebody to bolster your recruiting organization so you can focus on the game plan. This is what I advocated for weeks ago when I said, hey, or not, maybe it was last week when I was doing a morning drop and I said that he took a risk. He said himself. So again, people get upset when I start throwing facts around as if I'm making up facts. Nothing that I said in comparison of Brian Harsin and Coach Freeze was untrue. I'm not saying the results will be the same of those two coaches. It's not unfair for me to compare things that are actually true, though. So let's start there. But number 2, Coach Freeze himself said he took a calculated risk to focus on recruiting in year 1. He said that, not me. Right. So I'm asking, is his now new focus going to be trying to figure out how to get this offense going in year 2? It seems as if with this decision, that may be the direction that he's going. Recruiting in year 1, get that jump started, go over here, figure out my offense, get that jump started in year 2, and then by year 3, I can step back and be a CEO of those 2 things.
Right.
That's not crazy to think. That's not. When we start throwing facts around, people get upset as if I'm making up a fact. I didn't make up any facts. I said what happened, what he said. The facts are still there. I mean, again, recruiting, he's done an excellent job. The results on the field, I didn't make those up. They are what they are, and there needs to be a change and a pivot in the direction of how things are being handled internally in order to get something different from those on-field results in year 2. And I'm hoping this is what he's going to do in year 2, because I think that was a big reason why Coach Harsin failed in year 2, is he refused to just say, screw it, I'm going to be my own OC. And he tried to get a guy who'd never been the offensive coordinator to come and make him the OC when his initial plans didn't work out. That, in my opinion, was a big issue in year 2 Coach Harsin. Now, again, I'm not bringing recruiting into this conversation. I'm just talking about the on-the-field results and what was a big issue with that. That, to me, was a big issue. I'm hoping Coach Hugh Freeze does not make that same mistake and that he pivots and he focuses on that. He's done a good job at the one. I just need him to do the good job at the other.
I text Jake to clarify, and he did clarify Derek Nix.
Derek Nix, okay.
Yeah, he did clarify Derek Nix. So I just want to make sure that I'm going correctly there, because he responded to somebody that said Patrick Nix, and they said that they were already in. So Derek Nix's name has been floated out there for everybody who just joined us as a potential
I was about to say,
OC
Patrick
candidate.
Nix, bro, like that would have just blown my mind.
Like he just won state. And I think he's close to retirement.
As a high school coach, right? Like it's not like why
that would be very Gus Malzahnish of
I would have questioned a lot of things.
Right.
And listen, all right. Okay, Derek Nix makes sense. I get it. Here's the reality, man. Coach Freeze really wants to recreate what he missed out an opportunity to do at Ole Miss. He wants to try to get a very similar situation as far as his scheme and his talent is concerned. He felt like he missed an opportunity at Ole Miss and he blew it. And he's trying to put the gang back together and get some of those old recruiting guys back in, the same kind of energy in the building. And year one, he didn't get his opportunity to do that. I think he's going to make that pivot in year two. And yes, Patrick Nix did a stint in college, but I saw somebody say it in the chat. Nah, bro, we're not doing that. I'm sorry. I'd have a hard time getting on here and getting excited about Patrick Nix as the offensive coordinator. I just would. It ain't. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Coach Freeze is trying to recreate some of that magic that he had before. But a part of that magic was him being the play caller.
Play caller. Yeah. I think that this, if he hires Derek Nix, I think this signals that he is going to take over play calling for 2024 and try again, like you said, this was a first for him this year. Should remind everybody.
Yes.
Not calling plays was a first for him this year. He said he's been a play caller his whole career. He made his mark as a play caller. It is who he is. And what it turned into, I think, him not being able to let go of what he's always done. That created chaos for Auburn offensively, and this is a pivot. So they give a standard statement and say, hey, these things are always hard. These are always hard. So looking down the road here, Ike, at potential, like I said, Derek Nix is being floated as a potential new OC.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think that is a signal to everybody that Hugh Freeze plans to run solely his vision of this offense. And I would expect a hire here probably pretty soon. They've been mulling on this for a while. This was not an unexpected change, so this is not a shock. And although it is breaking news, it was not unexpected.
Right.
Wasn't unexpected at all. So the timing is what it is. Now before, your final signing day, you make this move because you've got to sell to, you're trying to flip Ryan Williams. You're trying to do some things. And after that bowl game, you've got to resell the recruits that you got to plan for the future. And I think that this is a signal to everybody that Hugh Freeze plans. He scapegoated Philip Montgomery and just said, listen, I hired the wrong guy. I'm going to take it over and, we'll get somebody in here that can work with quarterbacks. But this offense will be at least somewhat dynamic in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that he scapegoated him. I think he threw him under the bus. What I will say is he didn't ever protect him. I won't say he scapegoated him because I think that he deserves some blame. Right. So like scapegoating is he ain't part of the problem, but I'm going to make him the focus of it. What I will say is I think that Philip Montgomery, like this was just never going to be a good marriage.
Yeah. I would only argue that if I make a game plan and you come in and you meddle with my game plan and then it doesn't work and then you fire me, you scapegoated me. You 100% scapegoated me because you didn't let me do what I was hired to do.
Yeah.
You put your hands on it. It didn't work. And then I'm taking the heat for it, which is essentially what this firing signals. That to me, that's scapegoating.
So again, where I will disagree is putting the plan together wasn't necessarily the issue. It was the play calling day of, unless he was telling him, no, we're not going to call this because the play calling in the moment, you got a whole playbook. It ain't like he said, we're only going to run these 4 plays. That was your decision on game day to decide we're going to do all of these things with how we call plays. And that was the primary difference for me in the two is one of them is a better play caller. I'm not worried about the game plan and how we're going to attack. We can come in with a solid plan and you still don't go out there and call a good game. That part, I think, is a problem. Now, where I will agree with you, when we come into the bowl game, you were like, well, I ain't even really had nothing to do with this plan. And like, there shouldn't be a game. I don't really know that I want to hear a game where the head coach says I didn't have nothing to do with the plan. That to me is an issue. Like, why are you not involved in this plan? You're the head coach of this football team and an offensive guy. I just don't think that the marriage was good to begin with. So telling the truth about where you have issues with somebody, my issue with Coach Hugh Freeze and so far has been the same issue I've had the entire time. It's not with his honesty. It's sometimes with how he chooses to deliver his messages and the words he chooses to use when delivering those messages.
Yep.
And I think that's gonna be an issue for him, is figuring out how to be honest without saying everything, that's on your mind. And
Right.
I think sometimes he needs to just kind of temper his words a little bit better. Not telling him not to be honest.
Mhm.
I love the honesty from my head coach. I just think you could be better about how you phrase some of that stuff.
Yeah. Again, sources are coming in here now. Another confirmation. They're about confidence is growing that Derek Nix is going to be
That's
the
good.
next offensive coordinator, and Hugh Freeze is going to call plays in 2024.
That's good that
Yep.
they didn't go into this blind. They went in, okay, we've got a decision. We're going to go ahead. And so you don't have time for a lot of the speculative stuff that's
Right.
going to happen right now. We're going to go in and we're going to make this change and we're going to move in this direction. I like that, because I didn't like that I didn't feel, again, pointing out drastic differences. I didn't like that I felt like that was the case with Coach Harsin last year. It's like, what's taking so long for them to figure out what they're going to do with this? Like,
Right.
you fired this guy. Did you not have a plan when you did it, or you just like, man, screw it, you're out of here, and now you don't know where you're going after this, and it's taking weeks, and then it ends up taking months because whatever happened in that initial vetting process fell through. Like, I just feel like they handled that poorly last year when this happened. Well, not last year, year before last, when this happened with Coach Harsin and the change from Mike Bobo to then eventually going with Eric Kiesau. Like, what are we doing, bro? Like,
Right.
Eric Kiesau, really? That's where we landed. So hopefully this Derek Nix thing works out, and it's going to be Derek Nix again, a good recruiter. We'll have more information on him in some time. Actually, do you have anything on him? Because if not, I'm gonna pull it up right now. We can start talking about it.
Yeah, we can pull them up.
But I'll let you rock on whatever you feel about this whole situation while I pull up some information on Derek Nix.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, Philip Montgomery has been fired as offensive coordinator for Auburn football. Hugh Freeze has chosen to move on from this. And so, for those of us just joining us, I want to recap the timeline a little bit on what happened here. Philip Montgomery was hired. There was an idea that he had coached quarterbacks in the mold of Robbie Ashford, like RG3, maybe could come in and do some things creatively. His offense has produced over 600 yards a game at one point at Baylor. Hugh Freeze, they just never got off the ground together. As the season started,
Right.
the offensive struggles became apparent. Peyton Thorne never really became the quarterback that they thought he was going to be. The juggle between him and Robbie Ashford became a detriment to this team. And ultimately, they decided to go with Peyton Thorne over the last few games. Auburn won a few games against the weakest opponents on their schedule, and then ultimately lost to New Mexico State and a heartbreaker to Alabama. Having the talent to compete with Alabama, but then also losing to New Mexico State, again, you start to get exposed a little bit that maybe the game planning is the problem and it's not as much on the players as you say. Peyton Thorne took a lot of heat. The bowl game came and Thorne looked inept. He threw one of the worst pick sixes we've seen this year, if not the worst. And Holden Geriner came in and he struggled a little bit as a young guy getting thrown into the fire and trying to make a play. Hank Brown came in and looked like a seasoned veteran almost. And he threw some good balls. And the question was asked after the bowl game, what was it? Was it execution? And this was the first time that Hugh Freeze said to Auburn people that, look, man, the game plan wasn't great. I didn't like it. And I wasn't that involved until week of because of recruiting.
That was the beginning of the end, right? Like,
that was
not the beginning of the end, but that was like, you might as well have just signed his pink slip right
there. Yeah. And we said it repeatedly on the subsequent lives that this is the first time he's really, really just thrown him under the bus. Yeah. So I would expect a change. Now that change is upon us and Auburn is ready to pivot. Again, I think they've been thinking about this for over the last week. So now there's a strong name being floated out there. That name is Derek Nix. We're going to get into Derek here in a second and what he potentially brings to the table. But ultimately,
yes, who is Derek Nix? I got you right here in just a minute.
But ultimately, what Derek Nix is going to be, he's going to be a guy who helps acts as an assistant, behind the scenes at practice, and Hugh Freeze is going to call plays. So he'll help come up with game plans and do things of that nature, and probably work with quarterbacks. And we'll see what it looks like on game day. But that is the timeline to date. Ike, I'm sure you have something on Derek Nix for us now.
Yeah,
Talk
absolutely.
about who he is.
Derek Nix's profile. He's from Atala, Alabama originally. His coaching experience is Southern Miss. He was a grad assistant there in 2003. From 2004 to 2006, he was the running back coach at Southern Miss. Coached for quality control at the Atlanta Falcons in 2007. He was the running back coach at Ole Miss from 2008 to 2019, and then was the wide receiver coach in 2020 and 21. Most recently, from 22 until most recently, the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach for the Ole Miss Rebels. So he was on the staff there with Coach Freeze when he was there, continued to be on the staff there through the Lane Kiffin years, through the Matt Luke years. So Derek Nix has been a staple of that Ole Miss staff, potentially looking at being the new offensive coordinator for Auburn University in the wake of Philip Montgomery being let go as of just breaking, again, press release from Auburn as of 1:20 today. Got news. Philip Montgomery was not going to be retained for the 2024 season. Biggest name being floated out there as a potential hire, Derek Nix, the current assistant head coach and wide receivers coach at Ole Miss.
Yes.
So Derek Nix is, he's been a coach for a long time in the SEC. This is interesting, right? They already took the offensive offensive line coach from Ole Miss last year. In back-to-back seasons, is Coach Freeze going to poach a previous coach from the offensive staff from Ole Miss? It's looking like that might be the possibility.
Yeah, he has an inclination toward people that he's worked with previously.
For
I
sure.
think that you have a vision to do something your way. It's not a bad idea to go with guys who you worked with before in the past. Ultimately, this is a sign that they understand 2024 offensively, at least, is a little bit more urgent than they had planned.
Yeah.
Based on how the season ended.
To your point, I like that pivot.
Yeah, I like that pivot. It was that feeling that there would not be a pivot that had me at 7-5. After the spring, Ike, if it looks different, and Peyton Thorne looks like a new guy, or Holden Garner looks like a new guy, or Hank Brown looks like the next coming, or even Walker White, he's going to be an early enrollee. And I think that you make this move now as well, because you have to think about the young guys that you're bringing in who will need that tutelage from the guy who's going to be here in the future. So you make this pivot quickly before the spring. You don't go through a spring with a guy if he's not going to be your guy going through the fall. And then you get that guy in so that he can start to mold the quarterbacks in the vision of what Hugh Freeze has for this offense.
Yeah, a little bit more here on Derek Nix. Just looked up his all-time recruiting list. Let's see. I don't recognize the first name on here. 5-star recruit here, Sun Tareen Perkins. I don't recognize him. A linebacker. He was a 5-star recruit, and this is according to 247. Jarian Ely, definitely recognize him. 5-star running back. Tony Connor, safety that played there for Ole Miss. Rod Taylor, offensive guard. Aiden Williams. I'm trying to only grab the ones that he was the primary recruiter here for. Khalil Moore, I don't know that kid. Those are pretty much the only one. Braylon Speaks. Braylon Speaks was pretty good. Again, these are 4 stars and above that I'm naming here. Jordan Wilkins was a recruit of his. So some pretty good recruits on his list right here. I think the biggest thing that you get from him is not necessarily what his all-time recruit list is going to be, but the fact that he understands how Coach Freeze wants to run the organization from a recruiting standpoint, so he can trust him to just go and do that thing. If, again, this all pans out to be the guy. What we're talking about is still speculative. I don't think that there has been anything official. Well, I know there hasn't been anything official come out from the university as of yet, but that is being reported as the biggest name right now on the board and potentially going to be the hire. Derek Nix, current assistant head coach and wide receivers coach for the Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, definitely. This is this is going to be it's going to be an interesting spring. It's going to be an interesting spring. So we'll be with you guys as more news comes in here.
Yeah, Steve Neely with the super
Sources.
chat
Yep.
here. Hold on, I'll get to you in just a second. It says, "Is there any fallout from the current staff for being overlooked for the position?" So thinking about guys who could, really the only potential name that makes any sense in this whole thing would be Cadillac Williams, as to whether or not
Yeah,
Parnell is going to be promoted to OC. But he's never been an offensive coordinator, so I don't know
there
whether
was
there would be an issue there.
yeah, there was a lot of social media smoke about Cadillac possibly looking at opportunities.
Mhm.
We could not confirm that was the case for him, but I can tell you that if that was, that we'd probably be the first to know. And if we go back over the timeline of this, we know Cadillac has aspirations to be more than what he is. So going from running back coach to interim head coach, but having never been an offensive coordinator, getting a head coaching job might have been a big jump at that point. But now it's not so much of a stretch
Right.
that he could be considered for a coordinator position. So we'll see, where things are at there. I have some people reaching out to me now to kind of fill me in on fallout from the current staff. But this coach wants to do it his way. And I think that that's probably the most important aspect of this is that if you hire Cadillac as your next offensive coordinator, does he have the same vision as Hugh Freeze for this offense? His offense, when he ran it, was very run heavy.
Right.
He'll throw the ball a lot. Now, whether they felt like
Cadillac
that was out of
doesn't
necessity,
have a philosophy other than run the ball right now as an offensive coordinator.
Correct. Yeah. So could he be open to the type of offense that Hugh Freeze is wanting to run? That would be a big question for me. So if he were to interview for the job, I'm sure that would be the question.
Right.
The main question there is like, hey, can you get on board with this vision? And are you going to be okay not calling plays?
Right.
Because I don't think that next year they're going to bring in a guy who is going to call plays. It's not going to go well. And Hugh Freeze, again, is going to end up in the same spot at the end of the year.
Right.
Having had a tug of war all year, if it's not working the way that it should. So with a coach like Hugh Freeze, if you're going to take over play calling, you need to be competent and you need to be immediately successful, because that's the only way to keep his hands out of it. Right? Is for it to work, and for it to work early and often.
Yeah.
How do you accomplish that? Well, you got to have the right guy, trigger man. I can tell you that much.
100%.
You have to have the right trigger man. So figuring it out, whether that's Hank Brown or Peyton Thorne or whoever, they've got to figure that out. And I think that the next OC will be a strong part of that evaluation at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. Brad Browning with the follow-up joke. I love the running joke. He said, "My internet is fixed, and I finally see the story about Montgomery." That's going back to a previous live where he said, "My internet must be broken because I haven't seen that Philip Montgomery is fired yet." And now he does have his internet back up and running. But, yeah, I feel you. Listen, but we all knew this was coming, man. And honestly, this is not going to be the last staff member that is not going to be on this staff coming up next year. I see that this is going to begin.
There are going to be more changes. Yeah.
It just has to be. It's got to be more changes because there was a lot of stuff that wasn't right. And to the point that you were making, if Coach Freeze is your guy, let him be your guy and let him build this the way that he wants to build it. And so he can't look back. And this is, I get it. Whenever I bring up his name, apparently people lose their minds because they were losing their minds in the chat earlier when I said this. I bring up this name, people lose their minds. This, in my opinion, was a big problem with the marriage between Auburn and Brian Harsin is you didn't resource him and get out of his way. Resource Coach Hugh Freeze with everything and let him run his program. If he wants to hire and fire people, let him do that. If he wants to bring in certain players, let him do that. Resource him and get out of his way so that when it's time to make a decision, he doesn't have anybody else to look at but Coach Hugh Freeze because he was responsible for every decision that he made. Nobody else was.
Right.
I want to see the day when Auburn does that. Results be damned, right? Like if the results don't end up being what you want them to be, then fire the coach. But don't handicap him and then get mad at his results as well. And I believe, in going back to what you said about Philip Montgomery, if we're going to call Philip Montgomery a scapegoat, that's why Philip Montgomery would be a scapegoat, because you handicapped him and then you got mad at his results.
Right.
You can't handicap someone and then be mad that they're not running at full speed. That's not fair. Let him be the guy and let him do his thing. Whatever you hired him to do, let him do that. And then if he's not doing that job, you get rid of him. You move in opposite directions. Year one OC firings, to me, I kind of hate it, right? Because it feels like upheaval once again for this offensive program. Like, we're going to have to figure out once again what the scheme is going to be and how we're going to be running practices and what's going to be the process throughout the week with a new person in charge of the offense. But hopefully it's better because it's a singular voice now, and it's not two different people trying to stir in the pot and figure out, well, I want to add a little something, and then you end up not knowing what you get in your final dish because too many people had an opportunity to go in there and add ingredients.
Right.
They need to get to a place where they figure this out as a staff. Hopefully this is a sign that we are going in this direction.
Agreed. Like I said, by the moment here, it's increasingly looking more and more like Derek Nix is going to be the next offensive coordinator at Auburn. So again, that's not confirmed, but as information is coming into us here live, Ike, Derek Nix's name continues to grow stronger in this discussion. So to your point that you just made, this makes perfect sense. This makes perfect sense for how Hugh Freeze wants to operate, and you got to get it fixed next year. I think that there's no doubt that you have to get this fixed next year. The bowl game underscore might have been one of the best things to happen to Hugh Freeze. And in terms of preventing a mediocre 2024 that disappoints everybody else, that bowl game and the ending might have been one of the best things that happened in terms of getting them to realize we need to pivot, and we need to pivot now. I think that I don't always expect perfection from a coaching staff. I don't think anybody should. But when they make mistakes, you get paid millions of dollars for these times.
Yep.
Right? For the arduous trials and tribulations that will eventually come as head coach of an SEC program where you need to make the tough pivot, right? Like I said, this is one of those things where this is the Hugh Freeze that I would be looking forward to if I were an Auburn fan, right? If I'm an Auburn fan, I'm looking forward to the guy who can say, hey, this isn't working. Let's get something in here that does work. Let's mix this thing up, dude. Like he was given a second chance at life at Auburn. Auburn gave Hugh Freeze a chance to be a high-profile, high-level, top 15 paid coach. Now, what he has to give back is he's got to give back that flexibility in terms of, look everybody got that year one wasn't going to be a perfect year for Hugh Freeze. Nobody expected a 10-win season or an SEC championship, but it devolved into something that just was not. In a lot of ways, it wasn't better. Peyton Thorne threw for only 80 more yards than Robbie Ashford did in 9 starts last year.
Right.
And ran for 300 less yards than Robbie Ashford. Like the season overshadowed the fact that Robbie Ashford was almost a 1,000-yard rusher last year. He's a 900-yard rusher. Peyton Thorne ran for just under 700 and threw for 1,680 or something. Robbie threw for like 1,620 and ran for 900. So offensively, he had more yards, but the result was the same.
Right.
And I think that you bring somebody new in here because you do plan or you're anticipating pivoting away from Peyton Thorne. Right? Reset everything. You reset the quarterback, you reset the OC, and you take over the play calling. You start fresh.
Interesting. I hadn't tied it to a decision for Peyton Thorne, but
yep.
I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think even if you keep Montgomery, you have to at least reevaluate, which he said he was already in the process of doing that. But he also, Coach Hugh Freeze said at the end of the season before the bowl game that we're going to take a look at everything. And then he came back, a little bit later and said, all right, well, we're going to roll with Peyton Thorne. And then after the bowl game, he was back to everything. Like, he had taken Peyton Thorne off the table before the bowl game. He came back after the bowl game. He's like, nope, he's back on the table again. Everything is getting reevaluated this offseason. So it's time to figure, like, I just need the ship to be a little more stable for a couple of years here. And hopefully Derek Nix is a guy who's committed to be here for a couple of years if he ends up being the eventual hire for the for the offensive coordinator.
Mhm.
And we don't have to be having coordinator conversation every offseason unless that guy is getting a head coach, not because they're being fired. If you're moving on and you're getting promoted somewhere else, no more they're taking the same job at another school thing. No more there were issues in the locker room, so the guy decided to take an off-the-field position and eventually go somewhere else. No more, it didn't work out in year one, we're firing him stuff. I
Mhm.
want to see for multiple years we have a succession plan of new guys being in this spot because they got promoted to go elsewhere, and they have a new person waiting in the wings ready to take their spot. Or we stay with the same staff for a while so we can have B-Will buzzword continuity on our staff for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go here to the chat, let you guys get in on the conversation. We've been talking way too much, and we need you guys to get in here. Derek McClellan jumps in. He says, promote Ken Austin and have Coach Hugh Freeze call plays and bring in someone else. Chris S. says, it's not all on Monty. We had some good plays not executed well by those on off, not executed well by those on offense. I mean, nothing is all on one person, right? So yes, I agree with that. This is a good thought. Auburn Dad says, I wonder if Dylan Wade and Muskrat jumped because Monty is let go. They did come with him over from Tulsa.
Yeah.
So
Doubtful.
yeah, I don't know that they're that tied to him in that way, but we'll see. Brad Browning was saying that the potential of this being not a promotion of Kent Austin could be a thing where he feels like he's overlooked. I don't know if Kent Austin wants to be an offensive coordinator, if he's comfortable in his analyst spot and QB guy. And he's been with Coach Hugh Freeze for a while, so I don't know if there's any resentment there of anything like that. I don't anticipate that being a thing, but we'll see. Good point here by Devin21, who says, didn't Harsin have to promote Eric Kiesau to OC because they wouldn't give him the money to hire someone?
Well, let's be clear. I appreciate this comment, Devin. Devin's one of my favorite, both on Twitter and here in our comment section. The Kiesau thing was about not having a pivot to go to after Austin Davis never made it to the Plains.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when Austin Davis fell through, the toxicity is, how I'll term it, around Harsin made it really difficult to hire somebody else. Now, the OC at Arizona State, they were looking at pretty strongly. He had some NCAA issues surrounding him. So their first choice and their immediate pivot were off the table.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if you wanted to go out and get somebody reputable, it was really difficult because there was a strong feeling that Harsin wasn't going to make it through year two. You had, the what's-her-face scandal with the assistant. You had all these things, and they were attacking him. It just didn't seem like he was going to make it. So they couldn't get anybody to come here, and they had to go with an internal promotion. Now, if it were me, had I were Harsin, I probably would have just gone back to my trademark, which was calling plays, and gone down on my own boat. But they started the season, and it just wasn't working, and they didn't pivot until LSU. Right. It wasn't until after Missouri that they decided to pivot internally. We warned everybody that was coming. It looked better, but they still lost. And only a few games after that, he was gone. So it was thin ice that he was on. But ultimately, what that came down to was their first two choices fell through, and there wasn't anybody viable that you could attract to a situation with a coach that a lot of people consider from the outside dead in the water.
Right.
I don't think money was the issue. I think it was just he was dead in the water, and nobody was going to come here and coach for him and then be out of a job like 6 months later, which is essentially what happened.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know. There's a lot about this situation that's still got to be unraveled, but we are looking forward to getting to know a new potential offensive coordinator. Hopefully, between he and Charles Kelly, this recruiting organization will be in good hands, and we will see the emergence of a Coach Hugh Freeze offense that we've been waiting on for 13 games to emerge. It's about that time. Hopefully, this is the signal that we are going to be going in that direction. Any final thoughts here, Mike G, before we get out of here?
Yeah, look, Hugh Freeze had to do this.
Yeah.
You do this, you do it fast, and you make the changes now and show the people who support you that you are committed to doing whatever it takes to make sure that this thing looks better in year 2 than it did in year 1, and then setting up year 3 to be one of the best years Auburn football has ever had, if it's not, or at least in recent memory. So shades of maybe 2019 or something where you win 9-10 games. They need that. This is a 12-team playoff that's coming next year. It will not be tolerated missing a 12-team playoff where the SEC, let's be honest, will probably get 3 to 4 teams in easily every single season. Not going to be tolerated. You don't even have to win the SEC anymore. You just need to still be playing football when that playoff starts.
Right.
And only one team can win the SEC, and probably 4 teams are going to make it. So this will be a new landscape of college football that Hugh Freeze is headed into. Right. You head into that with a fresh perspective, and you try to do what nobody else has done, been able to do at Auburn, and you try to sustain success. Yep. You cannot sustain success. Eventually we all know how this ends.
Right.
Everybody's in search of that coach that can get over the hump, and they need to get over the hump.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we are going to get out of here. We have so many more things that will be popping up, and we'll try to make sure we keep you guys abreast of it, coming here, reacting to news as it comes out. Again, Philip Montgomery will not be retained, and we'll get into more of this as more information comes our way. If you haven't already shared the video, make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back at you guys the next time. Until then, and as always, War Eagle.
War Eagle.